The shove was impersonal. It always was with them. A sterile act, like ejecting waste. I stumbled down the ramp and hit the grated deck hard enough to send pain lancing up my spine. Welcome to Asphodel. The air hit me next, thick, dirty, metallic. It scraped down my throat, left a film on my tongue like I'd licked a burned coin. I gagged. Ozone and something hotter, wetter. Something wrong. Above me, no sun, no sky, just the gas giant, massive, swirling, and obscene. A roiling bruise of purple and wrought light peach that bled perpetual twilight across the cracked bones of the moon. Beneath my boots, Asphodel trembled. Constant, low-frequency quakes, the sound of something immense groaning in its own sleep. Every few seconds, a sharp crack echoed up from deep underground. The station's bones were shifting. No rhythm, no pattern, just the sound of inevitability. Decay in motion. They called it my inheritance, my birthright. An activation event, some executive drone had said with fake sympathy. My father was dead, which meant the genetic key he left behind, me, was now a living, breathing contract. Consolidated's biological insurance policy, clone of a legend, son of a monster. Asset Finian O'Connell. I was grown in a tank, raised in what they called the crash, a social crucible. There were others, copies like me. We didn't get childhoods, we got simulations, betrayal, psychological combat, rewards for manipulation, punishment for compassion. When they culled the program, I was the one left standing, not because I was the strongest, because I learned fastest, charm them, use them, gut them when they stopped being useful. I'd always known I was being made in his image. I just hadn't understood how literal that would become, not a metaphorical legacy, a full transference of debt, enemies, unresolved sins. He hadn't just died, he had escaped, and they'd handed me the bill. Now, dumped on Asphodel like expired cargo, the final lesson was clear. No simulation could teach the feeling of a place dying beneath your feet. A soft tremor ran through the platform again. The deck quivered like skin over bone. I reached into the pocket of my fatigues and touched the handle of the guard's knife. A simple thing, worn smooth by years of nervous thumbs. Not a weapon of ceremony. A tool. I hated that I even took comfort in it. Sentiment was weakness, but I still held it. The one rule of the crash echoed in my mind like a gospel. Use charm to create an opening, then exploit it. Without hesitation, I needed an opening now. The entrance to the main habitation block loomed ahead. A rust-streaked monolith of scorched duracrete, like the gaping mouth of a creature long since starved. People moved toward it, slow, broken shapes, bent-backed workers in patched uniforms. They moved like the gravity was heavier here, like the bruised sky itself weighed down on them. The files I'd hacked called them the indented, generational debtors, human property of Consolidated. Their contracts inherited, their lives measured in quotas of ore and oxygen. The green glow at the base of their skulls marked them as assets, bioscribes tallying every unit of survival against the impossible climb to freedom. I fell into step behind one of them, mimicking the shuffle, the slouched shoulders, the blank eyes. Ghost's Mantle. Step 1, vanish among the damned. But I wasn't just another debtor. The scribe at my neck whispered data into the corners of my vision. A clean overlay, air toxicity, pressure, my vitals, my decay, tracked in real time. For me, it was surveillance. For them, it was a shackle. Their every breath tallied, every calorie consumed logged against a number they could never erase. They didn't notice me, too broken to see new threats. I scanned their gait, their tools, their patterns. None of them mattered. Not yet. Then the siren hit, a slicing tone that cut through the ambient decay of the station like a blade. The crowd froze. Every indented stopped mid-step. Not fear, conditioning. The scribe flared green. A priority override hit me like a spike to the optic nerve. A message burned across my vision. Legacy clause activated for asset Finian O'Connell. Det 0 for acquisition, dead or alive. Below it, a hollow schematic rotated slowly. My face, not mine. His smirk, his eyes, his cruelty. And now it belonged to every hungry bastard on this rock. I watched the transformation spread across the platform. Heads lifted, eyes sharpened, shoulders straightened. The slouch of despair replaced by the angular posture of opportunity. I knew that look, had worn it in the crash. The moment a starving boy decides your food is worth more than your friendship. The green lights of their scribes glowed brighter, all turning in my direction. The first crew moved, 4 of them, miners. The leader was a slab of meat with a rebar shiv. His cronies fanned out, forming angles, cutting off exits. But the 4th, the young one, twitchy, underfed, he wasn't ready. He was thinking past the kill, dreaming about what freedom might feel like. That was my opening. I raised my hands, let the old voice slide in, smooth, polished, calculated. "Easy now," I said, loud enough to carry. "Consolidated doesn't pay for damaged goods. Whoever brings me in walking gets a bonus. Who wants to be my partner?" The lie was perfect. Almost. The cronies hesitated. The young one twitched. But the leader, he wasn't the kind to think. He lunged. I moved on instinct. No finesse, no style, just physics. I grabbed the young one, Milo, didn't know his name yet, and dragged him into the path of the shiv. The rebar punched into his gut with a sick crunch. His eyes widened in shock. I didn't stay to watch him fall. I moved. The knife was in my hand, a clean upward stab beneath the jaw of the leader. Efficient, silent, final. He collapsed into his crew. I ran. The hab entrance swallowed me. Inside, a maze of rusted corridors and flickering lights. The sound of boots behind me. Shouts. The hunt. I didn't think. I moved. I found a panel, rusted shut, wrenched it open, slipped inside, sealed it. Darkness. My back hit the wall. Breath heaving, blood hot in my ears. Alone, for now. I sat, knife in hand, shaking from the crash. My knuckles bled. The blade was slick, not a symbol, not a story, just a knife, just survival. They told me I was born to become him, and in that moment, choking on panic in the guts of a dying station, I knew they had succeeded. "You in there?" The voice barely reached me through the metal door, thin, young, tentative. Not a warden, not a hunter. I flattened myself against the wall, the knife low in my hand, every nerve screaming trap. "Go away," I hissed. "They're sweeping the corridors," the voice continued, "sector by sector. You stay in there, they'll find you. 20 minutes, maybe less." A pause, then softer. "I saw what you did out there. The way you played them. Not ran, not panicked, not hid behind someone else. He'd seen a show and he wanted to be part of it. My abacus spun. Stay here, certain death. Open the door, probable death. But he held all the cards. He was outside. I was trapped. He could walk away or he could hand me in, polish his own chains with a nice bonus of corporate approval. But he hadn't done either. "All right," I said, voice pitched calm, confident, the voice of a man offering something rare. "You can open the door." The panel scraped aside, a sliver of light, a sliver of a face. It was the wiry one, the twitchy boy from the platform, the one who'd almost died by my hand. Up close, he was a skeleton wrapped in coveralls, gaunt face, wide eyes. A bioscribe glowed faintly at the base of his skull, like the tip of a lit cigarette. "Milo," he said. Just that. A name. Like it meant something. "There's a service duct behind this junction," he said quickly. "It drops into the maintenance shafts. They won't look for you there." I stared at him, unarmed, shaking, but not running. "Get me out," I said, "and I'll owe you one." A lie. I never owe, I use. He nodded, something lighting in his face. "Hope, maybe. Idiot." We slipped into the ducts, narrow, corroded passages just wide enough for my shoulders. Veinstone lit the way in sickly green patches, the phosphorescence clinging to the walls like a disease. Milo led with quiet certainty, motioning where to duck, where to crawl, where the rust would give way and plunge you into nothing. I followed, grinding my pride to powder with every scrape. Eventually, the ducts opened into a canteen. Cramped, sweating bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. The air was hot, heavy, laced with the stench of boiled grit and human fatigue. Heads turned when we entered, then quickly turned away. But the damage was done. Whispers spread. The mask was reattaching itself. The ghost had walked in. 2 wardens were shaking down an old man at the back table. Standard issue uniforms, gray with flecks of blood, half-earned authority. Milo grabbed my arm. "Don't," he whispered. "They'll kill you." I brushed him off. "Watch." I strolled over, hands open, posture lazy. The canteen quieted. "My father had a rule," I said, voice loud enough to carry. "Never let the help steal from the house. Shows weakness." The lead warden turned, square face, dead eyes. "You've got a death wish, clone," he growled. I smiled, slow and practiced. And he had off-world accounts, caches, access hidden in here. I tapped my temple. "When the auditors come, and they will, you think they'll care about me? Or the man in charge when it all went dark?" The lie slid in like a scalpel. The word auditor did the rest. The warden's bravado wilted. He shoved the ration back at the old man and stormed off, dragging his partner behind him. The whispers resumed, sharper now, tinted with fear. The legend was working again. Then the old man laughed, a dry, rasping sound from the far table. I turned. He was ancient, skin like weathered hide, eyes cloudy with cataracts, mouth stretched into a toothless grin. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was knowing, amused. "You've got the face," he rasped, "but do you have the mind?" He tapped his head, then turned away, dismissed me. It hit harder than a punch. He hadn't seen Finian O'Connell reborn. He'd seen a kid in a mask, trying to wear a monster's skin like a costume. Before I could reply, the canteen shifted again. Not noise, not motion, stillness. All eyes turned, not to me, but to the entrance. He walked in like a shadow drawn in human form, not big, but heavy, like the air got thicker around him. His uniform was perfect, his face a history of scar tissue and violence. His eyes found me instantly. Warden Loran. He didn't sneer, he didn't smile. He stopped in front of me, looked at the face I'd inherited. "That face," he said, voice flat. "He earned it. You're just renting it." Then he looked past me, picked and indented at random, tapped something on his data pad. The man spasmed once. His bioscribe went dark. He slumped forward, dead. Administrative murder. No drama, no hesitation. The message was clear. I played cons. He was power. Loran didn't move on me. He didn't have to. He'd seen the bounty, and he saw it for what it was, a memo from a company that thought it still owned this place. He didn't want the reward. He wanted me erased, not just dead, unmade. He would wait. Let me run. Let me pretend I was clever. Then take it all apart, piece by piece, because that's what zealots do. They don't kill, they cleanse. Milo led me out through the veins, the station's forgotten arteries, a world behind the walls, narrow, dark, stinking of corrosion and dust. The light from the veinstone played tricks, throwing long shadows that bent the air into ghosts. I hated it. Not just the tunnels, the helplessness. I couldn't charm the shadows, couldn't lie to rust, couldn't talk the oxygen back into the air. I followed Milo, grating every second of reliance. The boy was a tool, nothing more. We emerged into a deeper level, quiet, almost sacred. The noise of the station faded until only the whispers of stone and the breath of dying machines remained. Then we saw it, a wall of green, perfect, polished, seamless. It drank light, drank sound, drank heat. Inside it, people, not corpses, not skeletons, people, suspended, preserved, as if they had been caught mid-moment and flash frozen into eternity. A miner reaching, a child curled up, all silent, all staring. Their bioscribes glowed inside the stone, webs of frozen light, patterns of dying thought, etched like fractures through glass. A data scream hit me. I pressed my head against the wall and it all came rushing in. Blood, screams, helmet lights, Lauren's face, younger, calm. My father's voice, a single command. Make them a monument. They did. They made them into silence, but not just horror. Something useful too. A whisper from a dying man. The warden's ledger. The sins had been catalogued, and that ledger still existed. Milo whispered beside me, voice full of reverence. They deserved better. That's why what we're doing, it matters, right? He saw a hero. I saw leverage. I turned back to the wall, touched it. My bioscribe flared. More data, more screams, a map of memory and blood, a weapon. Milo didn't understand. He thought I was here to fight for the dead. I was going to use them. I needed a comms unit, something tight beam, untraceable. There are old relays, he said, already moving. He thought it was a mission. He didn't know it was a war, and I was about to start preaching my own gospel, with lies sharp enough to cut gods. I sat in Loran's chair, not a throne, just leather rubbed smooth by 1,000 burdens and bolts rattling in the spine from decades of hard use. It faced a grimy viewport overlooking the plaza below, cracked pavement, crooked scaffolding, 100 eyes staring upward, waiting. I should have died in that cavern. I should have been crushed beside the man who mistook pain for righteousness. Instead, I woke to dust and silence, my leg pinned, my ribs cracked. Milo had crawled to me through rubble, blood-streaked and shaking, but alive. He dug me out, stone by stone. Never asked if I would have done the same. He didn't need to. He'd seen it. The one irrational act, the lunge that had saved his life. And that one moment had rewritten me in his mind, from user to savior. Not a man, a symbol, a myth, the ghost. And now here I was, sitting in the seat of the man I killed, the zealot who'd branded himself with obedience, who'd carved his body into scripture to prove he belonged. My inheritance was no longer debt, it was power. But Asphodel hadn't been liberated. It had been broken. With Loran gone, the wardens splintered. Factions emerged like rot spreading through an open wound. Every corridor had a new warlord, every decision bled. The quiet tyranny of order had been replaced by the chaos of a vacuum. It wasn't better, it was just louder. And still they came. Not to collect the bounty. That was old news now. Background noise in a myth retold over grit ration fires. They came for judgment, for mediation, for answers I didn't have. I'd become the axis around which their wreckage spun. Milo entered without knocking, his face older than his years, jaw set, clothes streaked with ash. He'd stopped calling me a hero weeks ago. Now he simply watched. The blind faith had hardened into something quieter. Trust, maybe. Or duty. Whatever it was, it anchored me in ways I didn't understand. Ganon's crew hit the water purifiers in Sector Beta, he said, setting a tray on the desk, trying to choke out the lower habs. The families down there are asking what you're going to do. What I was going to do. I looked out the viewport again. The crowd below wasn't armed. Not yet. Not angry. They were still waiting, not for orders, for belief. I turned to the desk. On one side, the guard's knife. Dull now, its edge nicked from Loran's skull plate, the tool I'd once treated like a compass. It had gotten me this far. And yet, it looked absurd now, a relic of a game I no longer knew how to play. On the other side sat Milo's Riverstone, smooth, gray, pointless. I'd mocked it once, proof of a world he barely remembered, where water carved stone over centuries instead of explosives carving tunnels overnight, where people passed heirlooms, not debt. Now I understood. It wasn't hope, it was something heavier, a standard, something to weigh myself against. The frantic calculations, the internal abacus that had once dominated every moment of my life, stirred, quieter now, not teeth-grinding equations of leverage and escape, not hunger masked as logic, something else. Consequence, cost. Ganon had 20 armed men, the families had none. If I moved directly, I'd trigger a war and break what little cohesion remained. If I waited, those people died. But there was a third path. Milo had scouted an unused maintenance conduit. I could bluff a move, force a parley, trade territory for water, burn a favor, spend a life. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't clean, but maybe it didn't need to be. I closed my hand around the Riverstone. It was still useless, but I kept holding it. "Tell the families I'm coming," I said. Milo didn't smile. He just nodded and left. I watched his back as he disappeared into the corridor, the same boy who had once followed me through a tunnel like a moth to a flame. He'd become more than an asset, more than a key. He'd become the measure of the man I pretended to be. And me? I wasn't a ghost anymore. Ghosts are stories people tell to scare each other. But legends? Legends decide what happens next. And as I stood from Loran's chair, the entire moon groaned beneath my feet, and I knew one thing with quiet, terrifying certainty. The story was no longer about him. It was about me, and I was just getting started.